She left it to both of you equally. The business, the property, everything. That's what the lawyer said. What he should have said was, she left it to both of you, but only one of you is going to end up with any of it. But lawyers don't say that. They read documents, they shake hands, they bill by the hour. And brothers, some brothers, they smile and they nod and they wait for the right moment. My name is Daisy Bradley. I'm 38 years old, and 3 weeks after we buried my mother in the red clay soil of Nashville, Tennessee, I found out that the person I trusted most in this world had already started stealing everything she left behind. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the morning of the reading, because that's where it started. Not where I knew, but where the thing that was already in motion finally showed its face. The office of Emanuel Greer and Associates sits on the 5th floor of a glass building on 5th Avenue North, downtown Nashville. I'd been there once before, when my mother rewrote her will 2 years ago after my father passed. Back then, Jake drove us both. He held the door open for me. He bought me coffee from the cart downstairs. He was so good at being a brother when it cost him nothing. This time, I drove myself. Jake Bailey is my half-brother. Same mother, different fathers. He's 44, 6 years older than me, and he never once let me forget it. Growing up, he was the one who knew more, who'd been there longer, who had opinions about everything I did. Not cruel, never openly cruel, just always slightly in charge. Our mother, Ruth Bradley, built Bradley Blooms from nothing, a flower and events business out of a rented garage in East Nashville. 22 years, 3 locations, a commercial contract with 2 hotel chains and a funeral home group that alone brought in $400,000 a year. She built it with bad knees and a spreadsheet she kept on a yellow legal pad until 2014. I worked beside her for 12 of those years. Jake showed up for 3. That matters. Remember that. Emanuel Greer was already at the table when I walked in. 60-something, silver-haired, glasses rings on his neck. The kind of man who has delivered bad news so many times it no longer changes his expression. Jake was already seated, too. Of course he was. He stood when I came in. He always stood when I came in. And he pulled out my chair and said, "You doing okay, Day?" Day. He'd called me that since we were kids. I used to love it. I wasn't. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours since the funeral, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. But I sat down, and I folded them in my lap, and I waited. Emanuel walked us through the will the way you walk someone through an airport, efficiently, no detours. The house on Shelby Avenue went to Jake and me jointly. The savings account split equally. Bradley Blooms, the business, the inventory, the 3 locations and the contracts, left to both of us, 50-50, with a clause that required mutual agreement on any major decisions for the first 18 months. 18 months of mutual agreement. My mother thought that would protect me. Jake nodded through all of it, calm, measured, the way a man nods when he has already made his plans and the plan does not require him to react to anything being said in this room. After Emanuel finished, Jake asked 2 questions, one about the property tax situation on Shelby Avenue, one about the timeline for transferring the business accounts. Both good questions. Both the kind of questions you ask when you already know what you're going to do and you need to know exactly how much time you have to do it. I didn't know that yet. I'm telling you now so you feel what I felt later, the specific humiliation of realizing that someone was already 3 moves ahead of you while you were still sitting in your grief. We walked out together. He held the elevator door. He asked if I wanted to get lunch. I said no, I was tired. He squeezed my shoulder,
the way he always did, firm, once, like punctuation, and he said, "We're going to take care of this together, Day. Mom built something real. We're not going to let it fall apart." I believed him. God help me. I believed him. The call came 11 days later. It wasn't from Jake. It was from Caitlin Marsh, my mother's bookkeeper, 27, sharp as a tack, the kind of woman who notices a $2 discrepancy in a 1,000-line spreadsheet and cannot let it go. She called me at 7:15 on a Tuesday morning, and the first thing she said was, "Daisy, I need you to come to the East Nashville location before Jake gets here. I need you to see something, and I need you to see it before it disappears." Before it disappears. I was in my car in 4 minutes. What Caitlin showed me on that laptop screen in the back office of Bradley Bloom's on a cold Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, changed the shape of everything I thought I understood about my brother. But that story, that one starts in Chapter 2. And trust me, you want to be there for it. If this story hit you, if you felt something in that lawyer's office, in that elevator, in that shoulder squeeze, go ahead and follow, because what Jake did next makes this look like nothing.
Caitlin was standing at the door when I pulled up, still in her coat, like she hadn't decided yet whether she was staying or running. "How long do we have?" I said. "He usually gets here by 9. It's 7:40 now." She locked the door behind us. That's when I knew it was serious. Caitlin Marsh was not a dramatic person. She was the kind of woman who color-coded receipts and kept a backup hard drive in a fireproof box under her desk. She did not lock doors unless there was a reason to lock doors. The back office of Bradley Bloom's East Nashville smelled like my mother, eucalyptus and paper and the faint sweetness of dried roses. Her reading glasses were still on the desk. I hadn't been able to move them. Nobody had. Caitlin opened her laptop and turned it to face me. "This is the business operating account, the one your mother used for payroll, vendor payments, supply orders, everything." I looked at the screen. A long transaction ledger. Scrollable. "Scroll to 2 weeks ago," she said, "the day after the will reading." I scrolled, and there it was, a transfer, $18,000 out of the Bradley Bloom's operating account into something called BRB Holdings LLC. "Keep scrolling," Caitlin said quietly. Another transfer. 3 days later, 22,000, same destination, then 11,000, then 30, then 9. "Caitlin," my voice came out flat, "what is BRB Holdings?" She reached past me and opened a second tab, Tennessee Secretary of State Business Registry, BRB Holdings LLC, registered 11 days ago, 2 days before the first transfer. Registered agent, Jake Bailey. I sat back in my mother's chair, her chair, the one with the cracked armrest she always said she'd replace and never did, and I did the math. 11 days, $90,000, out of a business my mother built with her hands, into a shell company my brother had set up before her body was even cold. "How did he get access?" I said. "The account requires 2 signatories for transfers over 5,000. That was Mom's rule from day one." Caitlin pressed her lips together, the way people do when the answer is worse than the question. "He changed it," she said. 4 days after the will reading, he went to the bank in person with the probate paperwork and had himself listed as sole signatory, pending your countersignature, which he told them was coming, which has not come because he never asked you." The room was very quiet. Outside, I could hear the street waking up. A delivery truck, someone's radio, the ordinary sounds of a morning that had no idea what was happening inside this office. "Why didn't you call me sooner?" I said, not accusatory, genuinely asking. Caitlin looked at her hands.
Because he told me it was an internal restructuring, a tax strategy. He used words that sounded right. He always uses words that sound right, Daisy. That's the thing about Jake. He is very, very good at sounding like the most reasonable person in the room, and I wanted to believe him because the alternative was... She stopped. The alternative was what it actually is, I said. She nodded once, small and ashamed, not of herself, of what she'd almost let herself be talked into. I pulled out my phone, called Alicia May, my mother's attorney, not Emmanuel Greer, a different one, a woman my mother had used for employment contracts and vendor disputes for 15 years. Alicia May was 51 years old and had a voice like a closing argument. She answered on the second ring. Daisy. Alicia, Jake has been transferring money out of Bradley Bloom's into a shell company he registered in his name, $90,000 in 11 days. He changed the bank account signatories without my knowledge or consent. Silence. Then, don't touch anything. Don't confront him. Don't let him know you know. Can you do that? I thought about Jake in that lawyer's office, calm and nodding, already 3 moves ahead. Holding the elevator door, squeezing my shoulder, we're going to take care of this together, Day. Yes, I said, I can do that. We heard Jake's key in the front door at 8:53, 7 minutes early. Caitlin closed the laptop. I stood up from my mother's chair. I had exactly 4 seconds to arrange my face into something that looked like a grieving sister and not a woman who had just watched $90,000 disappear into her brother's pocket. 4 seconds. Jake walked in with 2 coffees from the place down the street. He held one out to me. Easy, natural, the way he always did. Didn't know you were coming in early, he said. Everything okay? I took the coffee. I smiled and said, just couldn't sleep, wanted to feel close to Mom. He nodded, sympathetic, convincing. He put his hand briefly on my shoulder and walked past me towards the desk. I watched him sit in our mother's chair, the one with the cracked armrest. He sat in it like it already belonged to him, like it always had belonged to him. And that's when I understood that this was not impulsive. This was not grief making him reckless. This was not a mistake or a misunderstanding or a tax strategy I hadn't been told about. Jake Bailey had been planning this, possibly for a very long time. The question that kept circling me as I drove home that morning, the question I couldn't shake, was not how much he had already taken. It was who had helped him do it. Because $90,000 doesn't move through a bank without someone knowing. A shell company doesn't get registered without someone advising it. And Jake Bailey, for all his charm, for all his confidence, was not smart enough to do this alone. I found out who helped him 3 days later, and that name, that one hurt worse than Jake's.
There are 2 kinds of betrayal. The kind that comes from an enemy, and the kind that comes from someone who sat at your mother's dinner table. The second kind doesn't just hurt, it rewrites things. It goes back through every memory you have of that person, and it changes the lighting in every single one. Alicia May called me on a Wednesday. I was in Memphis. We had a supplier down there, Giovanni Cook, ran a wholesale floral distributor out of a warehouse off Elvis Presley Boulevard, had supplied Bradley Bloom's for 9 years. My mother trusted him completely. I'd driven down to make sure Jake hadn't gotten to him first. Giovanni met me in the warehouse. Big man, quiet voice, the kind of person who measures trust in years, not words. He shook my hand and said, "Your brother called me last week. Wanted to renegotiate the supply contract, said the business was going in a new direction." "What did you tell him?" I said. "Told him I'd wait to hear from you." He looked at me steady. "Your mother built that relationship with me, Daisy, not him."
I could cry right there in that warehouse, between the refrigerated rose shipments and the boxes of dried lavender. I didn't, but I wanted to. That's when Alicia called. I stepped outside. Memphis in November. Cold enough to see your breath, but not cold enough to feel it. The kind of weather that doesn't commit to anything. "I need you to sit down," Alicia said. "I'm standing in a parking lot in Memphis." "Then lean on something." I leaned against my car. "I pulled the registration documents for BRB Holdings," she said. "Jake is listed as registered agent, which we knew, but the LLC has 2 members. Jake holds 60% of it." "And the other 40?" I asked. A pause. The kind that means the answer is already in the air, and she's just deciding how to hand it to me. "Campbell Young." Campbell Young. Campbell Young, who had been my mother's business manager for 8 years, who sat with her every quarter to review the books, who gave a eulogy at her funeral that made 3 rows of people cry, who hugged me at the reception and said, "Ruth would be so proud of you, Daisy. She always said you were the one who really understood what she built." He said that to my face, at her funeral, while his name was already on the paperwork. I stayed very still against that car. The cold Memphis air moved around me, and I let it, because what I was feeling in that moment needed somewhere to go, and there was nowhere for it to go. "How long?" I said. "I don't have a confirmed date on when they started planning it, but the LLC was registered 9 days after your mother was diagnosed, not 9 days after she died, 9 days after the diagnosis." My mother was sick for 4 months before she passed. 4 months, and somewhere in that time, while I was driving her to treatments, while I was sitting in hospital waiting rooms with bad coffee and worse lighting, while I was sleeping on a cot in her bedroom so she wouldn't be alone, Jake and Campbell were building the structure to take everything from her. From her, while she was still alive. "Daisy," Alicia's voice was careful, "there's something else." I almost said, "Don't." I almost said, "Give me a minute." But I've never been the kind of woman who asks for a minute when the truth is already coming. "Tell me," I said. Campbell had signatory access to the business accounts, not just advisory access, actual signatory access. Your mother gave it to him 3 years ago for operational convenience. He used that access to move money before Jake even changed the bank authorization. There are transfers going back. She paused. "Daisy, there are transfers going back 6 months. 6 months. While my mother was in treatment, while she was fighting, while she trusted him." I pushed off the car and started walking. No direction, just moving, because my body needed to do something while my mind processed what it was being asked to hold. "Total amount?" I asked. "Between Campbell's early transfers and Jake's since the reading, we're looking at somewhere above $240,000, possibly more once we pull everything." $240,000. Out of a business my mother built on yellow legal pad spreadsheets and bad knees and 22 years of showing up. "I want to file," I said. "Everything. Criminal, civil, all of it." "I know, and we will, but I need you to hold 2 more days. I have someone I want you to talk to first. A forensic accountant out of Atlanta, Clinton Ibarra. He's testified in 40-something commercial fraud cases. If we're going to do this, I want him to build the paper trail so that Jake and Campbell cannot wiggle a single finger out of it." 2 days. I could give her 2 days. Fine, 2 days. I drove back to Nashville that afternoon, 4 hours on I-40 with nothing but flat Tennessee highway and my own thoughts. And my thoughts were not kind company. I kept going back to the eulogy. Campbell at the podium, his voice breaking on the word legacy. People in the pews daubing their eyes. Me in the front row thinking, he really loved her. I had thought that, I had believed that, while he was stealing from her, while the transfers were already running, while her name was still on the building. That's the part that people don't talk about when they talk about betrayal. It's not just the thing they did, it's every moment you were wrong about them, every time you defended them, every time you felt lucky to have them in your corner. All of that becomes evidence against your own judgment, and that is a very lonely place to sit. I got home at 8. There was a missed call from Jake. No voicemail, just the call. His name on my screen like nothing had changed, like he was just checking in, like he was just being a brother. I did not call him back. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table in Nashville with a glass of water I didn't drink, and I made a list. Everything I knew, everything I could prove, everything I still needed. And at the bottom of the list, I wrote one question, the one that had been sitting underneath everything else since Caitlin showed me that laptop screen. Does Jake know that I know? I found the answer the very next morning, and it came not as a phone call or a document or a transfer record. It came as a knock on my front door. At 6:30 in the morning, before the sun was fully up. And the person standing on my porch was not someone I expected.
I don't sleep well anymore. Haven't since my mother got sick. So when the knock came at 6:30, I was already awake, already at the kitchen table with cold coffee and that list. 3 knocks, deliberate, not urgent, certain. The kind of knock that knows you're home. I looked through the peephole. It was a woman I had never seen before, late 30s, dark coat, no bag, standing very still the way people stand when they've been trained to stand still. I opened the door. Daisy Bradley? Yes. My name is Alicia May's paralegal sent me. I'm sorry for the hour. My name is... She paused, just slightly. I work with Clinton Ibarra. He sent me directly. He said it couldn't wait. I let her in. Her name was Amani. She sat at my kitchen table, and she opened a folder, and she did not waste a single word. Clinton pulled the full transaction history last night. He found something in the transfers that changes the timeline. She turned the folder toward me. A bank statement. Bradley Bloom's operating account. But not recent. 14 months ago. My mother was still well 14 months ago. She was still coming into the East Nashville location 3 days a week. Still calling Giovanni in Memphis about rose shipments. Still writing on that yellow legal pad. The transfer on the statement was small. $4,000. Easy to miss. The kind of number that hides in the middle of a long ledger. Destination, BRB Holdings LLC. But BRB Holdings wasn't registered until 9 days after my mother's diagnosis, 8 months after this transfer. That's not possible, I said. The LLC didn't exist yet. Correct. And that means one of 2 things. Either the records were altered retroactively, or BRB Holdings existed under a different name before it was formally registered in Tennessee.
Clinton found the earlier registration. She turned to the next page. Georgia Secretary of State, an LLC called Bailey Resource Brands, registered in Atlanta, 2 years and 3 months ago. Members, Jake Bailey, 60%, Campbell Young, 40%. 2 years. Not after the diagnosis, not after the will reading. 2 years ago, when my mother was healthy, when she was still coming into the shop 3 days a week, still calling Giovanni in Memphis about rose shipments, still writing on that yellow legal pad. I stood up from the table, walked to the window. Nashville morning coming in gray and quiet, my neighbor's dog barking at something in the yard next door, the world completely unbothered by what was happening in my kitchen. 2 years. They had been building this for 2 years, patient, methodical, waiting for the right moment, and the right moment turned out to be my mother's death. "There's a reason Clinton sent me in person," Imani said quietly behind me. I turned around. Last night, someone accessed the Bradley Bloom's accounting system remotely, after hours. Caitlin has a security log on the system. Your mother set it up 2 years ago after a vendor dispute. The login came from a device registered to Campbell Young. He was in the files for 40 minutes. Clinton believes he was trying to clean the trail before we pulled everything. "Did he get to anything?" I said. No. Caitlin had already made offline copies, 3 drives. One Clinton has, Alicia has one, Caitlin has the third in a location she has not shared with anyone. I almost smiled. Caitlin Marsh and her fireproof box. "They know we're looking," I said. "Yes, and that means the window to file is closing. Once they lawyer up and start managing the narrative. How long do we need?" Clinton says 48 hours to complete the audit trail. Alicia says she can have the criminal complaint ready to file simultaneously. 48 hours. 2 days of pretending I didn't know. 2 days of answering Jake's calls. 2 days of being his little sister. "Okay," I said. 48 hours. Imani left at 7:15. Jake called at 7:40. I let it ring twice, just long enough to seem normal, and then I answered. "Hey," I said. Tired voice, grieving sister voice, the voice of a woman who does not know what her brother has done. "You sleep okay?" he said. "Not really. You?" "Same." "Hey, Day." His voice shifted. Softer, the older brother register. "I know this has been hard. I just want you to know I'm here. Whatever you need." "Whatever you need," said the man who had been stealing from our mother for 2 years. "I know," I said. "Thanks, Jake." I hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand, and I made myself a promise right there in that kitchen. Thursday was going to come. Jake was going to walk into that meeting thinking he was the one running things, thinking he was still 3 moves ahead, thinking his little sister was grieving and distracted and easy. And I was going to let him think every single one of those things, right up until the moment I didn't. But before Thursday, before the meeting, before any of that, Clinton Ibarra found something in the audit trail that none of us had been looking for. Something that wasn't about money at all. Something about the will.
Clinton Ibarra's office was on the 9th floor of a building in Midtown Atlanta. Clean, quiet, the kind of office that tells you immediately that the person inside it does not make mistakes. Alicia had driven down with me, 4 hours from Nashville.
We didn't talk much. She worked on her laptop. I watched Tennessee turn into Georgia through the passenger window and tried to prepare myself for whatever came next. You can't prepare for it, though. That's the thing nobody tells you. You can brace all you want. The truth still lands the way it wants to. Clinton met me at the elevator. Tall man, measured, the kind of stillness that comes from spending 20 years in rooms where the numbers tell stories that people have tried very hard to hide. He shook my hand and said, "Thank you for coming in person. What I need to show you is not something I wanted to send over a phone." We sat in a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows, Atlanta spread out below us, gray and wide. Clinton set a bound document on the table, tabbed, color-coded, the kind of document that has been prepared for a courtroom. "When I pull a fraud case," he said, "I don't just follow the money forward, I follow it backward, as far back as the records go, because fraud rarely starts where it looks like it starts." He opened the document to the first tab. The earliest transfer from Bradley Bloom's into the Bailey Resource Brands account, the Georgia LLC, was not $4,000. That was just the first one I showed Imani. The actual first transfer was smaller, $1,100, 26 months ago, coded in the ledger as administrative consulting fees. 26 months ago, my mother had been healthy. Business was good. She had just renewed the hotel contract. She took me to dinner to celebrate and ordered the good wine and said, "Daisy, I think we're finally where I always wanted us to be." While that dinner was happening, the bleeding had already started. The transfers escalated gradually, small enough each month to stay beneath the threshold that would trigger an automatic review. Campbell knew exactly where that threshold was, because he helped set it. He designed the system, and then he designed the theft to fit inside the system's blind spots. He turned to the second tab. The total confirmed misappropriation across the full 26-month period, he looked at me directly, is $471,000. The room was very quiet. Alicia set her pen down. I looked at the number on the page, $471,000, out of a business built on yellow legal pads, out of a woman who drove herself to her own chemotherapy appointments because she didn't want to be a burden. "That's not the part I needed you here for," Clinton said. I looked up. "When I followed the money backward, I cross-referenced it with your mother's legal records, the probate filings, the will documentation, the attorney correspondence. Standard practice. I look for anything that touches the asset being drained. And I found a payment, not from the business account, from a personal account registered to Campbell Young." He turned to the third tab. "A wire transfer, 18 months ago, $12,000 from Campbell Young's personal account to a name I didn't know, a man named Terrence Fowle." "Who is Terrence Fowle?" I said. "A disbarred attorney, disbarred in Tennessee 4 years ago for document fraud, specifically for falsifying estate documents." The word sat on the table between us, estate. Alicia leaned forward. "Clinton," her voice was very controlled, "are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying," he said carefully, "that $12,000 moved from Campbell Young to a man who specializes in falsifying estate documents 18 months ago, 6 months before your mother rewrote her will." 6 months before my mother rewrote her will. The will that Emmanuel Greer had read to us in his office on 5th Avenue North, the will that my mother had signed. Or the will that someone wanted us to believe my mother had signed. "We don't know yet," Clinton said. "I want to be precise with you, Daisy. The entropy to Fowle is confirmed. The connection to the will is circumstantial at this stage, but the timing is not a coincidence," Alicia said flatly. "No, I don't believe it is." I stood up, walked to the window, Atlanta below me going about its day. Cars on Peachtree, people on sidewalks,
all of it completely ordinary and completely far away. My mother had rewritten her will 12 years ago, after my father passed. I knew what that original will said because she had told me. She had sat me down at the kitchen table and told me directly. She said, "I'm leaving the business to you, Daisy. You built it with me. Jake will be taken care of, but Bradley Bloom's is yours." She said that to me, at that table. I remember the afternoon light coming through the kitchen window. I remember what I was wearing. I remember saying, "Mom, you don't have to," and her cutting me off. "Yes, I do. It's right, and I want you to know it." But the will Emanuel Greer read was 50-50, and I accepted that, because people change their minds, because maybe she'd had second thoughts on Jake, because I did not want to be the daughter who contested her mother's will 6 days after the funeral, because I had trusted that the document said what she meant. I should have asked sooner. I turned back from the window. "What do we need to prove it?" I said. "The original will," Alicia said, "the one before the rewrite, and a forensic document examiner to compare the signatures." "Where would the original be?" "With whoever drafted it," Clinton said. "Which attorney did your mother use before Emanuel Greer?" I knew the answer immediately, because I had been there. I had sat in the waiting room while my mother signed the original will 12 years ago. I had driven her there and waited with a book I didn't read. Her name was Patricia Hale. She had retired 2 years ago. She lived in Knoxville now, and if Patricia Hale kept her files, we had everything. Alicia was already on her phone. I sat back down at the table and I looked at that bound document, $471,000, a disbarred attorney, a will that may not have been my mother's words at all, and Jake on Thursday, walking into that meeting, thinking he was still running things. I thought about my mother, not the sick version, not the hospital version, the version at that kitchen table, afternoon light, certain voice, "It's right and I want you to know it." She had known, she had made her decision, she had documented it, and someone had gone back and changed it, while she was sick, while she was fighting, while she was trusting the people around her to let her rest. That was the thing that moved through me then. Not rage, not grief, something older and quieter and more dangerous than either of those. The absolute certainty that this was going to be corrected. Alicia got off the phone. She looked at me across the table. "Patricia Hale kept everything," she said. "Every file, digitized and stored. She remembered your mother immediately. She said, Ruth was one of the most clear-minded clients she ever had. Said she knew exactly what she wanted and why. She's sending the original will tonight." I nodded, once, slow. Thursday was 2 days away. Jake was expecting his little sister, soft, grieving, easy. What was going to walk through that door was something else entirely. But before Thursday, before I could face Jake across any table, I had one stop to make, one conversation I had been putting off, one person who deserved to hear this from me directly, before it became headlines, before it became the thing that defined everything. Her name was Alicia May. No, not my attorney. Her name was Caitlin, and what she told me when I got back to Nashville was something she had been carrying alone for a very long time, something that changed the shape of Thursday completely. Chapter 6. We're almost there.
I got back to Nashville at 9:47 at night. Caitlin's car was still in the Bradley Bloom's parking lot. Every light in the back office was on. She hadn't left. She had been there all day, waiting. I found her at my mother's desk, not working, just sitting, hands flat on the surface, the way you sit when you have made a decision and you are waiting for the moment to carry it out. She looked up when I walked in, and I saw immediately that whatever she was about to tell me, she had been holding it for a long time, the specific exhaustion of a person who has been carrying a secret that does not belong to them. "Sit down, Daisy," she said. I sat. 8 months ago, she said, my mother called me into this office. Just me, no one else. She closed the door and she sat exactly where I'm sitting now and she said, Caitlin, I need to tell you something and I need you to keep it until the right time. 8 months ago, my mother was 4 weeks into her diagnosis. She had told almost no one yet. She was still processing it herself, still deciding what to do with what she knew. Caitlin said she knew, quiet, direct, about Campbell. Not everything, not the full amount, but she had found a transfer she couldn't explain and she had gone to Campbell directly, and he had... She stopped. What did he do? I said. He cried, Caitlin said. He sat in that chair and he cried, and he told her it was a mistake, a processing error. He would fix it immediately. He was so sorry. He loved her like family. He would never... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. She believed him, I said. She wanted to believe him, Caitlin said carefully. There's a difference. Your mother was not a naive woman, Daisy. She was a sick woman who had just received the worst news of her life and who did not have the energy to simultaneously fight cancer and dismantle the betrayal of someone she had trusted for 8 years. She made a choice about what she could carry, and she chose to believe him because the alternative was too heavy. I sat with that, really sat with it, because I understood it. I had done the same thing with Jake my entire life, chosen the version of him that was easier to hold, because the true version was too heavy. But she didn't fully believe him, I said, or she wouldn't have told you. Caitlin nodded slowly. She said, if anything happens to me and Daisy comes to you with questions, you tell her everything. Everything I told you and everything you find. Don't protect Jake. Don't protect Campbell. Don't protect anyone except my daughter. Those were her exact words. Don't protect anyone except my daughter. The eucalyptus and paper smell of that office, her reading glasses still on the desk, still there, still exactly where she left them. She had known, not everything, but enough, and she had been sick and she had been tired and she had still taken the time to protect me, still thought ahead to the moment when I would need someone to tell me the truth, still made sure that someone would be there. That was my mother. That was Ruth Bradley. Even dying, she was still building something that would hold. There's one more thing, Caitlin said. She opened the desk drawer, the bottom one, the one my mother always kept locked. The key was on Caitlin's key ring. My mother had given it to her. She set a small envelope on the desk, white, sealed, my name on the front in my mother's handwriting. I looked at it for a long moment. I did not reach for it immediately, because some things you need a second before you open them, because once you open them, you cannot go back to the moment before you knew what was inside. She wrote it 6 months ago, Caitlin said quietly. She gave it to me and said, give this to Daisy when she's ready. She'll know when she's ready. I picked it up, opened it. 3 sentences. My mother never wasted words. Bradley Bloom's was always yours. I know what they did. Make it right. 3 sentences. That was all. That was everything. I folded the letter, put it in my coat pocket, against my chest, and I sat in that office with Caitlin in the quiet of a Nashville night, and I let myself feel all of it, the grief and the fury and the love and the weight of what my mother had trusted me to carry. I let myself feel it, all of it, for exactly as long as I needed to, and then I picked up my phone and I called Alicia May. We filed tomorrow, I said. Everything. Criminal complaint, civil action, will contest, all of it, before Thursday, before Jake Bailey walks into that meeting thinking he has the upper hand. A pause. Then Alicia said, Clinton finished the audit an hour ago. Patricia Hale's file arrived 20 minutes ago. The signatures don't match, Daisy. The rewritten will, your mother did not sign it. We can prove it." I closed my eyes, just for a second, just long enough to hear my mother's voice at that kitchen table, afternoon light, certain and clear. "It's right, and I want you to know it." "File everything," I said, first thing in the morning. Thursday was coming. Jake Bailey would walk through the door of Bradley Bloom's in his second-best suit, confident, certain, 3 moves ahead. He had no idea that the filing would already be done, that Detective Rosa Ortiz of the Metro Fraud Unit, who Alicia had briefed 3 days prior, would be parked outside, that Clinton Ibarra's 471-page audit would already be in the hands of the district attorney, that Patricia Hale's original will would already be in evidence, that Giovanni Cook in Memphis had already given a recorded statement, that Caitlin had already delivered 3 backup drives to 3 separate locations. That his little sister had been 10 moves ahead of him the entire time.
He was 7 minutes early. Of course he was. Jake Bailey had always been early to the things he thought he was going to win. I watched his car pull into the lot from the back office window. Dark SUV. Clean. Unhurried. He sat in it for 30 seconds before he got out, probably checking his phone, probably reviewing whatever version of this meeting he had rehearsed, whatever story he had built for the occasion. I stepped back from the window, sat down, folded my hands on the desk, my mother's desk, the one with the cracked armrest, that I had finally decided to keep exactly as it was. Caitlin was in the front room, Alicia was in the hallway, Clinton was on a call with the DA's office 3 blocks away, and outside in an unmarked car on the street, Detective Emmanuel Greer of Nashville Metro Fraud Division. Not the lawyer Emmanuel, a different Emmanuel entirely, one with a badge and a warrant and 20 years of watching people like Jake Bailey run out of road. The front door opened at 8:53. I heard him greet Caitlin, warm, easy, like the world was a room he had already been welcome into. Then his knock on the office door. 3 times, the same knock as always. "Come in," I said. He was wearing the second-best suit, like I knew he would be. Navy blue, good tie, the uniform of a man who has calculated exactly how much authority the moment requires. He smiled when he saw me, genuine-looking, warm-looking, the smile he had been giving me my entire life. "Day." He pulled out the chair across from me and sat. "You look tired. You sleepin'?" "Better than you'd expect," I said. He set a folder on the desk between us. I recognized the format: supply contract restructuring proposals, new vendor terms, a proposed management agreement that would have given him operational control of all 3 locations pending, and I am quoting directly, co-owner alignment. Co-owner alignment. That was the phrase he had chosen for stealing my mother's business. Co-owner alignment. I did not touch the folder. He noticed. A flicker. Small, but I had been watching Jake Bailey's face my entire life, and I knew every register of it. That flicker was recalculation. I want to talk about the operating account first. I know the transfers look irregular, but I can walk you through the— "Jake." He stopped. "The criminal complaint was filed this morning at 8:15. Wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit estate fraud, forgery, all of it. Campbell Young was served at his home in Brentwood at 7:45. He's already talking." The room went very still. Jake's face went through things, fast. Disbelief first, then calculation,
Then something I can only describe as the specific expression of a man who has just understood that the ground he was standing on is not ground at all. Campbell is... He stopped. Started again. Daisy, whatever Campbell told them, we have the original will. Patricia Hale kept everything. The signatures don't match, Jake. Mom didn't sign the rewritten will. You know she didn't. He looked at me, full eye contact, the way people look at you when they are deciding whether there is any version of this left to survive. I want a lawyer, he said, quiet, flat, the charm completely gone, just the man underneath it, which turned out to be considerably smaller than the performance had suggested. That's your right, I said. There's a detective outside who will be happy to facilitate that. I stood up, walked to the office door, opened it. Caitlin was in the hallway. Alicia was behind her. Clinton was on a call with the DA's office 3 blocks away, and outside in an unmarked car on the street, Detective Emmanuel Greer of Nashville Metro Fraud Division. Not the lawyer Emmanuel, a different Emmanuel entirely, one with a badge and a warrant and 20 years of watching people like Jake Bailey run out of road. Jake stood slowly, like a man whose legs have forgotten what standing is for. He looked at me one more time across my mother's desk. And I want to tell you what I expected to feel in that moment, because I had been imagining it for days. Satisfaction, maybe, or relief, or the hot, clean feeling of justice arriving exactly where you aimed it. What I actually felt was quieter than any of those things, sadder, more complicated, because the man standing across from me in that navy suit was still the person who taught me to ride a bike in the driveway on Shelby Avenue, still the person whose number I called first when my mother got sick, still my brother. And he took that, all of that, and decided it was worth less than the money. That's what I felt, the specific grief of a person who has lost something that was already gone before they knew it was leaving. Detective Emmanuel walked Jake out. I didn't watch them go. I turned back to the desk instead, sat down in my mother's chair, put my hand on the cracked armrest. Caitlin came in and stood in the hallway. She didn't need to. Some moments don't need words. They just need someone to stand in the doorway with you. Alicia called me 2 hours later. Campbell Young had given a full statement, named Terrence Fowle directly, confirmed the forgery timeline, confirmed the Georgia LLC, confirmed every transfer going back 26 months. He had cried through most of it, apparently, the way he cried in front of my mother when she confronted him. Some people cry instead of apologizing. It is not the same thing. The civil case took 8 months. The criminal case took 14. Jake received 9 years on the primary charges. Campbell received 6. Terrence Fowle, the disbarred attorney who forged my mother's signature, received 4 years, and a permanent bar from any involvement in legal or estate proceedings in the state of Tennessee. The original will was admitted to probate, the one my mother actually signed, the one that said what she meant. Bradley Bloom's, all 3 locations, came to me, 100%, the way she had always intended. $471,000 was recovered through the civil judgment, not all at once. These things never come back all at once, but it came back. Giovanni Cook in Memphis renewed the supply contract, said it wasn't even a question. Caitlin Marsh got a raise and the title of operations director. She cried, the good kind. Clinton Ibarra sent me a handwritten note when the criminal verdict came in. 4 words, your mother would approve. I think about her a lot, more than I did before all of this, which I didn't think was possible. I think about her at the kitchen table. I think about the yellow legal pad. I think about the bad knees and the good wine, and the hotel contract, and the way she said, "I think we're finally where I always wanted us to be." I think about what she knew, and what she carried, and what she still made sure to leave behind for me, in a locked drawer, in a white envelope. 3 sentences. Brably Dlims was always yours. I know what they did. Make it right. I made it right, Mom. My name is Daisy Bradley. I am the sole owner of Bradley Blooms, 3 locations, East Nashville, Germantown, and Midtown, built by my mother, protected by the people she trusted with the truth, and still standing. Still standing. If this story meant something to you, if you felt Ruth in that letter, if you felt Caitlin in that doorway, if you felt what it costs to sit across from your own brother and watch him run out of performances, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have a story like this one, you already know what to do. Make it right.